Hello everyone, welcome to the channel, which exists as a way for me to process and discuss my pathological relationship with Quentin Tarantino. He's put me in a state psychologically, right, which you can always deny, because he's a sick, evil man, right? Quentin is one of the most powerful clairvoyant psychics in the world. Certainly the most powerful in show business. Right? I'm the most powerful clairvoyant of the millennial generation. And when I didn't bend to his psychic whim at a screening of Jackie Brown at De Niro Con last year, he and the people around him entered into a covenant to compel me to madness. Right? So this channel exists, right, because for a myriad of reasons, but it's twofold. Right? The first of which is that Production Weekly has announced that Quentin Tarantino will be filming an untitled project with Stacey Sher and Sony this December, which is the movie Critic. It's the same movie, right, which has my intellectual property in it. That's why he's done everything that he's done, right, to get my scene for free, right? And then when I die, right, when I blow my brains out, he can say, that's what happens when you try to not give the movie people what they want, right? That's what happens when you don't give the black magic Hierophant what he wants, right? And so the second thing that's occurring, right, and they're both intimately connected, right, is that he's getting a Lifetime Achievement Award at the end of September with the Burbank International Film Festival. Hollywood Reporter Scott Feinberg will be doing a career retrospective. And while he's got his monkey suit on, he's going to make sure that I'm as miserable as I can be, right? And so these are two primary reasons why the channel exists. And make no mistake, he'll do the same thing every day. He's filming that movie, right? Why do I say that? You know, what do I mean when I say I'm in a state, right? That he's, right? Science demands that you accept one miracle, the Big Bang, and then everything else falls into place. And so we find ourselves in similar straits here with regards to this channel and the movie critic and everything that I'm saying, right? The one miracle, right, which isn't a miracle, I've been explaining, right? Psychic scientist, right? Is that Quentin is a clairvoyant who remote views people, right? The psychic phenomenon is a latent bandwidth which resides in all of humanity, right? In all of life. Right? This is my point, right? This is the point that I've been making, right? That life is a psychic intellectual reflex, a pressure, right? Against, right, the firmament of space by a divine abstract intellectual principle, notion, quality. Right? So, the highest levels of said expression have the adept behaving like God, right? And so you can heal the sick, right? And we call that white magic, right? And you can destroy as well. We call that black sorcery, base sorcery, right? The things that people refer to as psychic, right? Clairvoyant, right? Telepathic, right? Thaumaturgy, remote viewing. These are the same things that people refer to as magic and sorcery in centuries past. This logic is unequivocal, right? It's not up for debate, right? They're the same things. They're not similar things. They're the same things, right? And so, right? I had a revelation yesterday, and it's been there all along. It's been right there, right? What do we know about clairvoyance? Like, what do skeptics say about clairvoyance? Right? That they say, oh, it's cold reading. And I say that I agree with them a lot of the time. A lot of the time. Even legitimate people with a real gift. 9 times out of 10, what they attribute to clairvoyance is really just, subtle inference. Right? So, the inference here being that, right, as far as like my frustration, like my fear, right, my anxiety, right, being that he didn't do all of this. Right? And I, hand on the Bible, right? I don't have the Bible with me, but there's one somewhere in here, right? Everything that I'm saying is true, right? You ain't got to believe it, right? You can, right? right? You can fucking believe science, right? You can say that science has all the answers and this guy's talking out of his ass, and that's fine, right? But what I'm saying, right, is that he didn't do all of this, him and the people around him, right? For us to exist in this way for 20 years, that's, right? It's a weird, sick, pathological relationship, right? Where our every thought is filtered through the other, right? And so in that way, right? That's how the revelation came, right? Because we're so close. And it's always been right there. It's always been right there. Right? And true, he stole all of mine as well, with the same tactics. And when he did, and he told me to come there and scream at the top of my lungs, I gave him everything that he wanted. Right? That curse that I put on whomever, badass cinema, right? A projection of his mind, right? Savage. And of course, it's not a real curse. Now we're really playing the curses game. But my point is that, right, I trusted him in this way, right? Because I didn't trust him at Tribeca, or I didn't want to trust it, and I felt bad, right? And so he took the letter that I wrote him that was honest, right? That said, these are my shortcomings, these are my failings, right? And threw me right into the bus anytime I wrote someone to try to help us reconcile. And he laughed his ass off the whole time, knowing that Trey Anastasio and David Berlinski were both like, oh wow, how unfortunate. How unfortunate you have this crazy guy. Right? I don't know that they believe that anymore. Right? But my point is that, right, he and I, right there, right, forever, not for a little while, not for a week. No. Doesn't work that way. The two of us, right, the four of us, the five of us, right, we're bound together beyond all space and time, right, through to the edges of eternity, right? So I've written a novelization of my experiences. We're reading through the novel. We're talking about the writing. We're talking about the nature of reality, right? So, right, the thought of us, right, existing in this way is so ridiculously sick, right, that it's not, right, like my point, before I begin reading on the novel, we're talking about the novel, we're talking about the nature of reality. My point is that it didn't have to be this way, right, that like if he was reasonable, right, then, right, when I heard him at Tribeca, right, it didn't have to descend into this black magic evil, right, because he doesn't have to control the mind of everyone that comes into his life, right? And now he does, right? We both possess each other's minds. That's what it is now, right? He's got all the money, but I got all the wisdom, right? Right? He could have just produced the non-disclosure agreement, paid me $5 million if he's using the scene, paid me $1 million if he's not, and then that would have, right? That would have been it, right? I would have never had this channel, right? I would have never been talking about it, right? I would have played a little Hamlet and had a little life. Man, maybe that's still true, right? Because, again, he's at his breaking point psychologically. And so I live in palpable fear constantly, right? That's why I'm drinking right now, right? That he's going to send people to murder me, because if I'm dead, he has no more problems, right? And of course it's true, right? Whomever goes first, we're going to hover over the other. As a psychic phantom, we'll haunt their dreams, right? We'll see them everywhere we go. We'll see the other. By his design, not by ours.